Most people think hospitals feel safest at night, but every nurse knows that's when the halls get too quiet, when patients say things they shouldn't know, when rooms that don't exist show up on the cameras, and when something walks the corridors that isn't on the staff list. Tonight, you'll hear 6 true stories from the night shift, the kind you don't forget, even when the sun comes up. Comment where you're watching from, and let's begin. I never believed the stories older nurses whispered during slow nights. Things like call lights turning on in empty rooms, or voices coming through the overhead speakers long after a patient had passed. I always thought those were just ways to scare the new staff, or keep each other awake at 3 a.m. But on my 3rd week working the night shift in the ICU, something happened that I still can't explain. Something that changed the way I walk through hospital hallways forever. It started with a patient named Harold Davis, 78 years old, COPD, kind eyes, the type of man who apologized every time he pressed the call button. He reminded me of my grandfather, quiet, polite, always thanking me for the smallest things. I didn't know him long, but he was one of the few patients I genuinely felt comfortable around. The night he died was calm. No codes, no alarms, no chaos from the ER sending us last-minute admits. Just the steady hum of the vents and the soft beeping of monitors. If you've ever worked in a hospital at night, you know that kind of silence feels wrong, like the building is holding its breath. Harold's breathing had been getting weaker throughout the night. We all knew he didn't have much time left. Still, I wasn't prepared for the moment he grabbed my wrist, his hand cold, shaking, eyes unfocused. "If she calls," he whispered, "tell her I'm not ready yet." I didn't ask who she was. There wasn't time. His vitals flatlined 2 minutes later, and the room became still in that heavy way only ICU rooms can. Like everything inside it had exhaled for the last time. We followed protocol. Covered the body, dimmed the lights, sealed the room for the transport team. Nothing strange, nothing out of place. At least, not yet. But around 4:20 in the morning, 3 hours after he passed, my pager vibrated, a single line glowing on the screen. Room 308, patient requesting assistance. The room Harold died in. The room that was supposed to be empty, dark, sealed. I stared at the message for a long time before I stood up, telling myself it had to be a glitch, a system error, a leftover alert from hours earlier. But as I walked toward room 308, lights flickering softly above me, hallway quiet except for the buzz of old fluorescent bulbs, something in my chest tightened, a feeling I still don't have the right word for, half dread, half recognition, like I already knew what I was about to see. When I turned the corner and the door came into view, the light inside the room, that light we had turned off, was glowing, slow, soft, like someone had pulled the string and stepped away. And then the call light above the door clicked on, bright red, silent, steady. I stopped walking, because for the first time that night, I realized I might actually be afraid. I stood there longer than I should have, just staring at that quiet red glow above the door. Call lights aren't dramatic in real life. They don't buzz. They don't ring. They just shine, steady and patient, like someone inside is waiting for you. But room 308 was empty, sealed, and no one had touched that call button since Harold died. I finally forced myself to breathe and stepped closer. The hallway felt colder near his door. ICU vents are strong, but this wasn't that kind of cold. This one crept up my arms and settled at the base of my neck, like it had weight. When I reached the door window, I froze again, because the light in the room, the one that had been completely switched off after we covered the body, was on. And not just on, it was dimmed low, the exact setting Harold always asked for at night. He hated bright lights, said it reminded him of the day she died. I never asked who she was. I swallowed hard and scanned the room through the narrow glass. Nothing moved. The bed was empty. The curtains were still pulled halfway around it, and the sheet we'd draped earlier was folded neatly on the counter, untouched. It looked normal. Normal enough for me to start convincing myself again that this really was a system error. Hospitals are full of faulty wiring, loose cables, old call light boxes that short-circuit when humidity rises. So I told myself all of that as I unlocked the door. The moment it clicked open, the smell hit me. Not death, not disinfectant, something else. Cold air, and something faintly metallic, like the way the air tastes during a storm. I stepped inside, and the quiet felt wrong. ICU rooms are never truly silent. There's always the hum of machines, the hiss of oxygen, the rhythmic pump of IVs. But here, nothing. Just the soft buzz of the ceiling light and my own breathing. I walked toward the bed, slow, trying to convince myself I wasn't expecting anything. But I was. Because right there, in the center of the mattress, was a shape. The sheet had dipped, like someone had been lying there just minutes before. A perfect indentation of a body, still fresh, still warm looking. Only there was no one. My throat tightened. I pressed my fingers to the dip in the sheet. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either. Just wrong. I backed away, pulse loud in my ears. And that's when the call light panel beside the bed clicked again. A tiny sound, a soft mechanical tap. The red light over the door blinked off, then on, then off again, like someone was pressing the button from inside the room, right next to me. I turned to look, and the chair in the corner, the one that had been facing the wall all night, was now angled toward the bed, as if someone had been sitting there, watching. I didn't hear it move, I didn't see it turn, it just was. A quiet, suffocating dread washed through me. Not panic, not terror. Just a heavy, sinking certainty that I wasn't alone. I forced myself to reach for the call light panel, trying to turn it off manually. But before I touched it, the monitor above the bed flickered on. Just for a second, a single green blip, a heartbeat. Then darkness again. I stumbled back, whispering to myself that it was a power surge, a malfunction, anything that made sense. But deep down, some part of me already knew the truth. Something in room 308 was trying to get my attention, and whatever it wasn't finished. I backed out of the room slowly, not running, not turning my back, just easing away the way you would from a wild animal you're not sure is sleeping or watching. When I stepped into the hallway again, everything looked normal. Too normal. The red call light above the door blinked off the moment I crossed the threshold. The overhead lights hummed the same way they always did. A distant monitor beeped from another room, steady and calm. For a second, I almost convinced myself that I'd imagined all of it. But then my pager buzzed again. A short vibration. Just one. Room 308. Staff needed. I stared at the words. My stomach dropped. That alert hadn't shown up in years. Not on any shift I'd worked. Most hospitals don't even use it anymore. It only pops when someone physically presses the staff button instead of the normal call button. Someone inside that room had pressed it, or something was imitating the action perfectly. I stepped farther down the hall, away from the door, trying to put distance between me and whatever was happening. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. Not fast, just heavy. A few steps later, I nearly ran into Michelle, one of the senior nurses coming back from the break room. She took one look at my face and frowned. "You look like you just saw a ghost," she said with a forced laugh. When I didn't laugh back, her expression changed. "What happened? You looked into 308? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Michelle let out a slow breath, not surprised, not confused, just resigned. "Come to the station," she said quietly. "We need to check something." We walked without speaking. The ICU felt different now, not threatening, not haunted, just aware, like the building itself was listening. At the nurse's station, she logged into the system and pulled up the call light activity for 308. The screen loaded slowly. Rows of timestamps appeared. 4:20 a.m. Patient requesting assistance. 4:20 a.m. Patient requesting assistance. 4:20 a.m. Staff needed. 4:21 a.m. Patient requesting assistance. Michelle's face tightened. "That room's been quiet for months," she muttered, "ever since the old incident." I opened my mouth to ask her what she meant, but before I could, the overhead speaker crackled. Just a soft static pop. Then a voice. Thin, male, barely audible. "Nurse, help." We both looked up at the same time, because the speaker that made the sound was the one right above room 308. Michelle slammed the mute button on the console. The static died instantly. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just stared at the console like she was waiting for it to move. Finally, she whispered, "You weren't supposed to hear that. Not on your shift, not this early." Her voice wasn't scared, it was sad, like she knew something I didn't, something she didn't want to pass on. I swallowed hard. "Michelle, what's going on with that room?" She looked at me. Really looked at me. Her eyes tired, older than her face. "That room shouldn't have been assigned to Harold," she said softly. "It wasn't supposed to be used anymore." I felt my breath catch. "Why not?" Michelle didn't answer immediately. She just reached into the drawer and pulled out an old printed log sheet. Edges yellowed, ink faded. She slid it across the desk toward me. I didn't understand what I was looking at first. Then I saw it. The last entry on the page. Room 308, code blue, patient deceased. Time of death, 4:20 a.m. Date, March 11th, last year. The exact time Harold's call light came on, to the minute. And beneath that entry, handwritten in pen, was one more note. Family reported hearing him call for help over the speaker system after pronouncement. A chill slid down my spine. Slow, precise. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Michelle placed her hand over the log sheet before I could read further. "That's enough for tonight," she whispered. "Trust me, you don't want to know the rest." But it was already too late, because the moment she said it, the call light behind us clicked on again. Room 308. Glowing red, steady, patient, just like before. And this time, I wasn't sure I wanted to answer it. Not ever again. I didn't answer the call light. Neither did Michelle. We just stood there, the quiet buzzing of the overhead lamps growing louder, sharper, almost like the air itself was straining. Then, just as suddenly as it turned on, the red light above room 308 clicked off again. The hallway went still. Michelle closed her eyes for a moment, collecting herself, then said, "Listen, you need to finish your rounds. Stay away from 308 unless you have to. I'll file a report about the alerts." Her tone tried to sound firm, but I could hear the edge in it, the exhaustion, the fear she was too experienced to show plainly. I didn't push her. Honestly, I didn't want answers, not then. So I went back to my charting, checked on my other patients, pretended the floor felt normal again. But something had shifted inside the unit, like the air pressure had dropped slightly. Every sound felt closer. Every shadow stretched longer than it should. Around 5 a.m., while documenting vitals at the nurse's station, I felt a strange vibration against my hip. Not my pager, not my phone, just a faint buzzing through the counter, like someone tapping their fingers underneath the desk. I leaned down and listened. Nothing. When I sat back up, the station phone lit up. Line 3, incoming call. Michelle looked at me, raised an eyebrow. We weren't expecting calls. Family hours were over, and administration never called this early. I picked it up. "I see you night shift. This is..." Static answered me. Thick, wet, crackling. Not the usual kind. This had depth, like someone breathing through it. "Hello?" I said again. My voice sounded too thin in my ears. More static. Then something else. A shape of a sound, but not quite a word. I pressed the receiver tighter to my ear, and that's when it came through. A whisper. A man's voice. Close. Too close. "She's here." My skin prickled instantly. I pulled the receiver away like it had burned me. Michelle stepped toward me. "What did they say?" I swallowed. I'm not sure. But I was sure. Those two words came out in Harold's voice. I'd heard it enough times in the hours before he died. Polite, soft, breathy. Michelle didn't press me. She just looked at the phone, then silently unplugged the entire line from the wall. "Phones glitch too," she said, not sounding convinced. The sky outside the ICU windows was slowly turning dark blue, hinting at sunrise. Usually, that made the last hours of night shift feel lighter, safer, but not that morning. Around 6:10 a.m., as we were preparing for shift change, the overhead speaker crackled again. This time, louder, clearer, not a voice, not static. Something else. A dragging sound, something scraping lightly across a floor, slow, rhythmic, like the wheels of a chair being pushed, or something being pulled across linoleum. The sound echoed down the empty hallway, filling every corner of the unit with a dull, vibrating dread. Michelle's face went pale. "That's coming from inside," she whispered. But I already knew which room it came from. Room 308. Because the door, which had been firmly shut for hours, was now slightly open. Just an inch, but enough to see darkness pooling past the crack. Too dark. Darker than it should have been with the lights on inside. I felt something twist in my chest, a slow tightening. Not fear, exactly. Something heavier. Michelle grabbed my arm. "Don't," she said, barely audible. "I'm serious, don't go near it, not alone." But even as she said it, the hallway lights flickered. Once, twice, and the call light above room 308 clicked on again. Bright red, a silent reminder. Michelle exhaled shakily. "We'll wait for day shift," she said. "No one goes in till then." But deep down, I already knew I wouldn't be able to avoid that room. Not after what I thought I saw inside the narrow gap of that door. A silhouette, too tall, too still, standing just behind the curtains, watching. Shift change was minutes away. You'd think that would make everything feel easier, like daylight was about to save us. But the closer it got to 7 a.m., the heavier the unit felt, like the building didn't want to let go of the night yet. Michelle stayed close. Closer than I'd ever seen her with any new nurse. Her eyes were fixed on the slightly open door of room 308, waiting for any sign of movement, any shift of shadow. We didn't speak. Speaking felt wrong, too loud, like it might draw something out. At 6:36 a.m., the dragging sound began again. Not overhead this time, not through the speakers, directly from inside the room. Slow, scraping, pushing something across the floor, a chair, a foot, something weighty. I felt my pulse tighten in my throat. Michelle whispered, "Don't respond, don't move, don't acknowledge it." But I couldn't help it. I looked. Through that tiny inch of open door, I saw the curtain shift, just a few centimeters, but enough to see something behind it. A shape, too tall to be Harold, too still to be human, like someone standing perfectly upright, head bowed slightly, hands at their sides, just watching the door. "Michelle," I breathed. She didn't look. She kept her eyes locked on the hallway floor, jaw clenched, whispering something under her breath. A prayer. Or maybe just trying to stop herself from running. The scraping stopped. Silence. Thick. Full. Then, the lights in the hallway flickered hard, buzzed, flickered again, and the call light panel above the door burst on. Not steady this time, not patient. It pulsed, like a heartbeat, fast, erratic. 308, 308, 308, 308, over and over again. My pager vibrated so violently I thought it might fall off my waistband. I looked down. Room 308, code blue. My stomach twisted. There was no patient in that room. I looked up to tell Michelle, but she was already shaking her head violently. "No, ignore it. It's not real. It's not for us." But my legs were already moving. Not toward the room. Away from the station, toward the far end of the hall, because something inside me knew if I stayed still, it would come out. I wasn't thinking, just reacting, just trying to breathe. But halfway down the hall, every monitor in the ICU beeped at once. Not alarms, not vitals, just a single simultaneous beep from every machine. An impossible sound. A united tone that rolled across the unit like a wave. The lights dimmed, the air shifted, and from room 308, I heard Harold's voice. Clear, gentle, broken. "Please, don't leave her alone." I froze, ice spreading under my skin. Michelle grabbed my arm so tight it hurt. "Don't answer him," she whispered. "He's not talking to you." The hallway speakers crackled again, louder this time, clearer. And then another voice joined his, a woman's voice, soft, distant, crying. I'd never heard it before, but something about it made my chest collapse inward, like grief pressing into bone. Michelle whispered, "That's why the family complained last year. The patient, the one before Harold, he didn't want to go. He kept calling for his wife, for hours after he died." I swallowed the panic building in my throat. "So the room is, what, haunted?" Michelle shook her head. "No, not haunted, just unfinished." Before I could respond, every light in the hallway flicked bright white, then snapped off. Total darkness, except for one thing. The thin line of light under the door of room 308. Glowing, white, cold, spilling across the floor like a hand reaching out. And in the silence that followed, something pressed against the inside of the door. Just once. A slow, deliberate knock. Soft. Polite. Exactly the way Harold used to call with his hand when he was too weak to speak. Michelle whispered, "Don't open it. Whatever you do, don't open that door." But the light under the door grew brighter, stretching further, almost touching my shoes. And for one impossible second, I could have sworn, I saw a shadow kneel down on the other side, as if someone was putting their face right to the gap, to look back at me. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at that thin strip of light, watching that shadow hold perfectly still on the other side of the door, like it was waiting for me to move first. Michelle's hand was still clenched around my arm, but even she wasn't breathing normally anymore. I could feel the tremor in her fingers, the weight of something she'd seen before and hoped she'd never see again. Then, as quietly as it had appeared, the shadow pulled back. Not fast, not slow, just retreating, like someone straightening up, turning away, walking back to the bed. The light under the door dimmed, faded, went out completely. The hallway lights flickered twice, then steadied. The ICU returned to silence. A silence so deep it felt like the whole building exhaled at once. Michelle didn't speak, neither did I. Not until the day shift nurses began trickling in, laughing softly, yawning, tossing bags onto the station like nothing had happened, like they couldn't feel the last traces of whatever lingered in the air. Michelle squeezed my arm once before letting go. "Don't mention this during handoff," she said quietly. "They won't believe you, and it'll just follow you." I stared at her. "Follow me?" She looked at room 308, her eyes tired, hollow. That room doesn't attach to a patient, it attaches to whoever answers it. The words sank into me like cold water. Before I could respond, she picked up her bag and walked off the unit. No goodbye, no explanation. She just left, like she couldn't get away fast enough. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the door, now closed, dark, silent. A normal room again, at least on the outside. By the time I finished my report and stepped out of the ICU, the sun was rising. Warm, soft, but the warmth didn't reach me, didn't touch the place inside my chest that still felt cold. I went home, showered, tried to sleep. But just before I drifted off, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number, no caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. A few seconds later, the notification popped up. New voice message. I shouldn't have listened to it. I know that now. But I did. And through the static, through the thin hiss of something that didn't sound like interference, I heard a soft, strained voice. Harold's voice. "Please. She's not ready yet." I sat up in bed, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. Then the message ended, and for a moment, just before the line cut to silence, I heard one more thing. A second voice, a woman, crying, very close to the microphone. "Don't leave me alone." I stared at my phone for a long time, not moving, not breathing. Then, as I watched, the screen lit up again. Another incoming call. No number, no location, just 2 words, room 308. I kept seeing one of my patients wandering the halls at 2 a.m., except his legs were paralyzed and he couldn't leave his bed. I used to think I had a strong grip on what was real. Working nights in a dementia ward will test that fast. You see people talk to walls, argue with people who aren't there, relive arguments from 30 years ago like they're happening right now. So when I say this next part, you can write it off as burnout, sleep deprivation, a young night shift aide finally cracking. But I know what I saw, and I know what the camera showed us later. I kept seeing one of my patients wandering the halls at 2 a.m. Only one problem. From the waist down, he was paralyzed. He wasn't supposed to be able to leave his bed at all. His name was Walter Grant, 82 years old, thin, soft-spoken, the kind of old man who said thank you for every blanket, every glass of water, every small favor like it was a big one. His chart said advanced dementia and bilateral lower extremity paralysis. His eyes said something else. Not empty, not confused, more like tired of not being believed. I work nights as a PCA in a mid-sized hospital in the Midwest. We're the ones who do the dirty work, vitals, toileting, turning patients so they don't get bed sores, walking the ones who can walk, reassuring the ones who can't. Our floor feels different after 11 p.m. Families go home. TVs get turned down. Lights dim into that weird halfway brightness that makes every shadow look just a little too long. By midnight, it's just us, a skeleton crew of nurses and aides, and 30-some patients who drift in and out of the past. Walter was one of the quieter ones. He didn't yell, didn't fight, didn't accuse us of stealing his things like some of the others did. He just stared at the doorway a lot, especially at night. "Have you seen her?" That was his favorite question. He would ask me that almost every time I went in to check his vitals. "Have you seen her? At this hour?" I'd joke. "No one comes to visit at 2 in the morning, Walter." He would frown a little, not angry, just disappointed. "She keeps walking past the door," he'd mumble. "I thought maybe you'd seen her too." I asked once who he was talking about. He went quiet, stared past my shoulder at the hallway, and for a second, the fog in his eyes cleared. "My wife," he said. "She doesn't know I'm on this floor. She keeps looking for me." I could have shrugged it off. Another dementia story. A scrambled memory trying to put itself back together. I almost did. Until the first night I saw someone standing at the end of the hallway. Someone tall, thin, wearing a hospital gown. And from where I was standing, even from 50 feet away, he looked exactly like Walter. The first night I saw him, I honestly thought I was losing it. It was around 2:10 a.m., the hour when the ward gets quiet in a way that isn't peaceful, just empty. Like the whole building is exhaling, waiting for something to happen. I'd just finished helping another patient back into bed when I looked down the north hallway. And there he was, tall, thin, silhouette sharp under the motion-activated nightlights. A man in a hospital gown, standing perfectly still at the far end of the corridor, facing away from me, his shoulders, his posture, the slight tilt of his head. Everything in me said Walter. But Walter was in room 14, strapped gently at the waist so he wouldn't fall out of bed. He couldn't even sit up without help, let alone walk 40 feet down the hall. I blinked, hard, trying to reset my own eyes. The figure didn't move. "Sir?" I called out quietly, not wanting to wake the other patients. No response. I took a slow step forward. The motion sensor above me clicked on, washing the hallway in a warm, low glow. But the one above the figure stayed off, which shouldn't happen. Those lights are sensitive. A moth can set them off. I froze again, my heart thudding too loudly in my ears. "Sir?" I tried again, pushing my voice out softer this time. Still nothing. And then, as I took a second step, the figure drifted sideways, not walked, not turned, just shifted, almost like sliding behind the corner wall. Gone. I hurried down the hallway, pulse tight, trying to catch a glimpse around the corner, but there was nothing. No footsteps, no movement, just the hum of the vents and the faint beeping from distant rooms. For a second I wondered if exhaustion had finally caught up to me. Night shift warps your head. Lack of sunlight makes your brain play tricks. I almost convinced myself it was a shadow, or a reflection from the polished floor. But when I walked back toward the station, something made me stop in front of Walter's room. His door was cracked open, just an inch, but he always slept with it completely closed. He told me he didn't like her standing in the doorway. I peeked in. Walter was asleep, chest rising slowly, arms relaxed at his sides, waist strap secure, exactly where he should be. But something was off. His fingers were curled into fists, tight, white-knuckled, and his head was turned toward the door, like he'd been watching something until the moment I looked in. I whispered his name, Walter. His eyelids fluttered, but he didn't wake. Instead, he mumbled something, so soft it barely existed. "She walks faster now." A chill slid up my spine. I didn't know why those words scared me. They shouldn't have meant anything, not yet. But the tone he said them in, like he was warning me, stuck with me the rest of the night. When I got back to the station, one of the nurses, Tara, noticed the look on my face. "You good?" she asked. "Thought I saw someone down the north hall," I said. "Tall guy, gown." But the sensor didn't pick him up. Tara stopped typing. Her eyes lifted slowly. "That hallway?" she asked. "The one past room 18? "Yeah." She shut her laptop like she suddenly remembered something she didn't want to think about. "We get false motion readings there sometimes," she said too quickly. "Ignore them." "I didn't say it was motion," I answered. "I said I saw someone." Tara's jaw tightened. "Just don't go down there alone after 2, she muttered. "And keep an eye on Walter tonight." I frowned. Why him specifically? but she didn't answer. She just stood up, stretched, and walked off down the opposite hall, leaving me with a knot in my stomach, and the feeling that I'd only seen the beginning of something. Something that wasn't supposed to move, was moving. And it had noticed that I noticed. The next night, everything felt off the moment I clocked in. Nothing dramatic, just that subtle heaviness the ward sometimes gets, like the air thickens, and the building is waiting. I tried to shrug it off. Night shift does weird things to your head. But when I walked past Walter's room, I saw his door was cracked open again. Just an inch, same as last night. Except this time, Walter was awake. Wide awake. He wasn't calling for help. He wasn't confused or rambling. He was staring straight at the doorway, at me. His eyes were clearer than usual, too clear. "You saw her, didn't you?" he whispered. The question made something cold settle in my chest. "I saw someone," I said slowly. "But it wasn't her," he cut in. "She's smaller. She moves different." He lifted one trembling hand and pointed down the hall. The same hallway where I'd seen the figure the night before. "She's faster now," he whispered. "She gets impatient." "Walter, who were you talking about?" I asked softly. He didn't answer. He just closed his eyes like the conversation exhausted him. I checked his vitals. All normal for him. Strap secure, blankets tucked, nothing unusual. But as I was leaving his room, he spoke again. "Don't follow her," he murmured. "She doesn't remember the way back." I didn't know what that meant. Not then. At around 2:38 a.m., the bed alarm for room 14 went off. The kind of alarm that screams patient leaving bed, even if the patient physically can't. I ran, straight down the hallway, heart pounding, knowing what I'd find but hoping I was wrong. I pushed open the door. Walter was still in bed, strap in place, legs motionless, breathing slow. But the alarm was blaring. And the chair next to his bed, the same one he always kept neatly against the wall, was turned sharply toward the doorway, as if someone had been sitting there, watching him. I silenced the alarm and checked every strap, every sensor. Nothing had moved. Nothing had loosened. So why did the system think he got out of bed? I stepped back out into the hall to reset the alarm at the keypad. The keypad blinked green, then yellow, then green again, like something had just passed in front of its motion sensor. But the hallway was completely empty. I swear the temperature dropped a few degrees, enough to make my arms prickle. I turned to go back to the station, and froze. At the far end of the hallway, in the dim part the lights never fully reached, a tall shape stood facing the wall. Same height, same build, same gown. Walter. Again. Except Walter was asleep behind me. I whispered, "Sir?" The figure didn't respond, didn't shift, didn't even breathe, just stood there, facing the wall like he was waiting for someone, or listening to something I couldn't hear. I lifted my radio. "Tara, can you check Walter's bed? I swear I'm seeing..." Static crackled through the radio violently, drowning my voice. Then a whisper broke through. Not Tara, not anyone I recognized. A woman, soft, close. "He's not allowed to walk alone." My blood ran cold. I turned back toward the figure, but it was gone. The hallway was empty, silent, still. Only one thing remained, a faint smear on the floor, low, near the baseboard, like someone had dragged their foot or their hand across the waxed linoleum. I tried telling myself it was fatigue, night shift paranoia, reflections, shadows, anything that made sense. But the smear on the floor wouldn't leave my mind. It wasn't big, just a dull line across the wax, a streak the size of a fingertip, or the side of a bare foot dragging lightly as someone shuffled along. I crouched down and touched it. It wasn't sticky, wasn't wet, just a faint distortion, like something had disturbed the waxed surface recently. And Walter hadn't walked in over 2 years. I radioed Tara again. No response, only a soft, crackling hiss. I decided to check the cameras. The dementia ward has a tiny security room that smells like stale coffee and old carpet. It's cramped. One desk, one chair. A wall of monitors showing every hallway, every doorway, every corner except patient rooms. I slipped inside and closed the door. The monitors glowed in the dimness. Silent. Too bright, too clear. I rewound the north hallway camera about 15 minutes. At first, nothing. Just the usual. Motion lights flicking on and off, empty hall, the slow drift of dust in the air. Then I saw it, a shape at the far end of the hallway. Tall, thin, head tilted in the same way Walters always did when he was listening hard. But the figure wasn't walking. It wasn't moving at all. It was appearing. One frame empty. Next frame, there. Perfectly still, hands at its sides, head slightly bowed. No transition, no footsteps, just cut, like it blinked into existence. My throat tightened. I watched as the figure stood in place for 30 seconds, facing the wall. Then it shifted. Not step, not turn. Shifted sideways again. A sudden movement from one side of the hallway to the other in a single frame. A motion that no human body could make. My hand hovered over the keyboard. I checked Walter's room hallway camera at the exact same timestamp. There he was, Walter, in bed, breathing steadily, unmoving, sleeping. Two Walters, one real, one. Something wearing his shape. I leaned in closer, staring at the screen. The figure's outline flickered, just a little, a glitch, like a corrupted video file. Then, a small shape appeared beside it, short, slender, barely reaching the figure's chest. A woman, or the shape of one. Her head hung low, hair reaching her shoulders. She didn't have a face. None of the cameras could catch it. Just blurred skin, like someone smeared the lens. The tall Walter shape leaned toward her, as if listening, and the small shape slowly raised its hand and pointed, down the hall, toward Walter's real room. My breath stuck in my throat. I switched to the hallway camera outside room 14, empty. Then, a flicker. For one frame, just one, the tall shape stood directly outside Walter's door, and the smaller one knelt beside it. The overhead motion sensor did not turn on. I shoved back from the desk so fast the chair nearly tipped. I felt a presence behind me, not a sound, not a movement, just a pressure, a weight, like someone was standing too close. I turned. Nothing, just the stale, empty room. I exhaled shakily and stepped back into the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Walter's door was still cracked open, that same single inch. His room was quiet, too quiet. I took a step toward it and stopped. There were footprints, clear as day, bare footprints, small, light, like a woman's, leading from the far end of the hallway, all the way to Walter's door. Stopping right at the threshold, but not going in, not yet. I followed the trail of footprints with my eyes, not touching them, not getting too close, just tracing the path they made across the floor. They started far down the hallway, beyond room 18, where the lights hardly reached. Then they traveled in a clean, uninterrupted line, straight toward room 14, Walter's room. But they stopped exactly at the doorway, like someone had stood there, waiting for him to come out, or waiting for me to go in. I leaned forward slightly, examining the prints. They were faint, but unmistakably real, smudges of something pale and powdery, not dust, not dirt, almost like the residue left after someone walked across waxed tile with bare, dry feet. I'd seen enough odd things in this ward to know when to trust my instincts. Something had been standing here, recently, minutes ago. I swallowed hard and pushed open Walter's door. The room was dim, The overhead light was off, but the window shades let in a thin line of moonlight that cut across the floor in a cold sliver. Walter was awake, eyes open, but he wasn't looking at me. He was staring toward the corner, the far corner, where the moonlight didn't reach, the one place in the room completely swallowed in shadow. His lips were moving. "Walter?" I said softly. He didn't look away from the corner. "She's upset," he whispered. "I told her I can't walk, but she keeps asking." "Who keeps asking?" I said, stepping closer. He blinked slowly, like waking from a dream. "My wife," he murmured. "She says she found me, says I need to hurry." A quiet dread settled over me. "Walter, your wife passed years ago." He didn't get angry. He didn't argue. He just stared deeper into the shadowed corner, like something was standing there just out of my sight. "She's right there," he whispered. "You don't see her?" No, I didn't. But the air felt heavier, charged, like someone was holding their breath in the room with us. I stepped back out into the hallway, just long enough to radio Tara again. Still just static. I checked the unit phone. Dead tone. Line offline. When I stepped back into Walter's doorway, I froze, because the footprints that had stopped at the threshold were now inside the room. Small, smudged, leading from the door to the corner where Walter had been staring. I whispered, barely breathing, "Walter, did she come inside?" He nodded, slow, weak. "She wants me to stand," he said. "She says I've rested long enough." I looked down at his legs, thin, pale, completely lifeless for years. And yet, he was lifting his hands, reaching for the straps, like something invisible was coaxing him upward. "Walter, stop," I said sharply. He froze, shaking. "She says we're late," he whispered. "She wants to take me home." The bed alarm suddenly blared. Not the soft beep, not the motion alert, the full emergency alarm. The one that triggers when a patient is physically lifting off the bed. I grabbed Walter's shoulders to keep him from leaning forward. His skin was freezing, not cool, freezing, like he'd been lying outside in winter air. "Walter, listen to me. No one is here. You're safe." His eyes filled with tears. "No," he said, voice cracking. "She's right next to you." A white blur flickered in my peripheral vision. I turned too fast, but there was nothing. Just the open doorway and the empty hall. But the air felt wrong, like someone had just moved, like I'd missed something by half a second. "Please," Walter whispered, "don't let her take me." My throat tightened. "Walter, no one is taking you anywhere." He shook his head violently. "You don't understand. She's lost. She keeps walking the wrong halls. She thinks I'm still in our old room." I felt my pulse spike. "What room?" Walter's gaze drifted toward the ceiling, as if he could see through it. "Room 3C, he whispered faintly. "The one she died in." The room had been repurposed years ago, converted into storage, locked after an incident involving confused patients wandering inside. I remembered hearing that during orientation, but Walter's next words made my skin crawl. "She says I have to go back there first. That's where I'm supposed to wake up." Wake up? The phrasing struck me like ice. "Walter, what does she look like?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. Then his eyes shifted past my shoulder, toward the corner of the room again, and he whispered, "She looks like me." Walter didn't speak again after that, not for several long minutes. He just stared past my shoulder, into the far corner of the room, as if someone was standing there, breathing there, studying both of us. I backed away slowly, not turning my back, not blinking too long. Every part of me tense, waiting for something to move in the dark. The hallway behind me felt colder than the room. I stepped out and pulled the door nearly shut, leaving only a sliver, because something in me couldn't bear to close it fully. Closing it felt wrong, like trapping him inside with something. I took a breath and started down the hall. Then a soft knock echoed behind me, not from a door, from Walter's wall, the inside of it. 3 slow taps, like someone was feeling their way along the building, or searching for a room they couldn't find. I turned back. Walter's room was still, silent, but the temperature dropped enough that my breath fogged when I exhaled. I forced myself to keep moving. I needed Tara, or anyone. Halfway to the station, the overhead lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the far end of the hallway went dark, like someone had pulled a curtain across it. I stopped breathing, because in the dark section, 2 shapes were standing. One tall, one smaller, slumped, almost leaning. They weren't walking, they weren't moving, they were waiting. The tall one stood with its head bowed, hands dangling unnaturally low, shoulders too square, posture too rigid, like something imitating the idea of a person. And beside it, the smaller figure. Her head hung so low her hair brushed her shoulders. Her arms hung at her sides. Her body tilted slightly, like she was listening for a voice she couldn't quite catch. For a second, just a second, the smaller shape turned its head toward me. Her face was wrong, like the camera blur I had seen earlier, but now in real life. A smudged suggestion of features. Nothing distinct, nothing human, just the idea of a face. A sharp static hiss crackled through the hallway, but it wasn't from my radio. It came from the dark. The small figure lifted one arm, slowly, unsteadily, and pointed. Not at me, at Walter's door. I felt my blood run cold. "No," I whispered, stepping back. "No, he's not going with you." The tall shape straightened, its movements stiff, mechanical, like joints bending in the wrong order. In one blink of the lights, they were closer, half the distance they'd been before. My throat tightened. I backed up until my shoulders hit the wall. The smaller figure's arm dropped. Her head tilted like she was studying me, or trying to remember me. Another flicker of the lights. They were gone. Just vanished. Like the space they occupied had been edited out of reality. And then, Walter's bed alarm screamed again. I sprinted. The hallway bent unnaturally ahead of me as the lights struggled to catch up, flickering in long stretches. The air felt like moving through cold syrup. I reached his room, threw the door open. Walter was sitting up. He hadn't done that in years. His eyes were wet, not panicked, not confused, just tired, like someone waiting for a bus that finally arrived. "I told her no," he whispered. His voice cracked like dry paper. "I told her I would come, but not yet." I slowly approached the bed. "Walter, who was out there with her?" He swallowed. "Myself," he said softly. "She doesn't remember faces anymore, so she uses mine." I froze. The hallway lights hummed. He kept speaking, voice faint. "She's been trying to find me since the night she died. She walks the wrong halls, looks in the wrong rooms." Walter looked past me toward the doorway. "She keeps forgetting where she left me." My skin went cold. "Walter, no one is there. You're safe." He shook his head. "No, she's here. She always comes before I go." A tear rolled down his cheek. "And she doesn't like being alone." Before I could answer, he exhaled, long, slow, and didn't inhale again. His chest stayed still, his eyes half open, his hand limp and cold against the blankets. The monitor didn't alarm, didn't beep, didn't react at all. Like it hadn't seen him die. Like the machine couldn't register he was gone. I stepped back, barely breathing. The room felt lighter, too light. And then, from the far hallway, the motion sensor clicked on. Once, then again. 2 shapes passing by. Neither cast a shadow. The next morning, maintenance found something outside the old room 3C. the one that's been locked for years. Two sets of footprints, one larger, one smaller, leading right up to the door, then stopping, not going in, not leaving, just waiting. I've walked this hospital for years, but last night, there was a hallway I'd never seen before, and someone waving at me from the very end of it. I took care of a patient for 3 nights straight. I checked his vitals, hung his fluids, helped him eat, charted on him like everyone else. And then on the 4th night, I was told he didn't exist. Not, we moved him. Not, he was discharged. Just, there is no patient in that room. There hasn't been for years. I've done night shift long enough to know sleep deprivation can mess with your head. You forget what day it is. You mix up rooms. You walk into supply closets thinking they're patient bays. But I know the difference between being tired and losing my grip on reality. What happened in Observation Wing 2 wasn't a mix-up. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a bad handoff. It felt like taking care of someone who was slowly being erased while I was still looking right at him. I work as a night shift RN in a mid-sized hospital, not a huge trauma center, just busy enough to never really sleep. We have an observation wing where we park patients who are in between things, too sick to send home, not sick enough to commit to a full admission, waiting for scans, waiting for psych consults, waiting for beds to open up on other floors. We call it the limbo unit. No one is supposed to stay there long. The rooms are numbered in pairs, 210A, 210B, 211A, 211B. The first time I noticed something off was with room 212B. On paper, 212B was always listed as empty. On every printout, on the whiteboard, on the census count. But on my first night assigned to that wing, I found a patient sitting in there, middle-aged, maybe mid-40s, too thin, like he'd lost weight fast, hospital gown hanging off his shoulders, short dark hair, hands resting quietly on his knees, and he was facing the wall, not the door, not the TV, not the window, just the corner of the room. Like the most interesting thing in the world was hidden in that dull beige paint. I checked my sheet. No name under 212B, no diagnosis, no order set. "Sir?" I said softly, stepping inside. "Do you know where you are?" He didn't look at me, didn't flinch, didn't seem scared or confused. He just said, in a calm, quiet voice, "She told me to wait here." I glanced back at the doorway. The hall was empty. "Who told you to wait?" I asked. He didn't answer that. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, still staring at the wall. "Is she gone yet?" he asked. "Or is she still walking up and down?" There was something in his tone that made my skin prickle. "Who?" I said again. "Who are you talking about?" He went silent, like a switch flipped. I took his vitals, all within normal range. Pulse a little slow, blood pressure fine, temperature cool. I checked his wrist for an ID band. There wasn't one. No bracelet, no sticker, nothing to link him to any chart. When I stepped back out into the hallway, I grabbed the nearest nurse at the station. "Hey," I said, "who's the guy in 212B?" She looked up from the computer, then frowned. "There's nobody in 212B, she said. That room's empty." I thought she was joking, or testing me, or hazing the new night nurse. But her face didn't have that messing with you look. "It's empty," she repeated, tapping her computer screen. "Look, census shows 19 patients, not 20. I stared at the list. Room 212B, blank. No placeholder, no pending admission number, just nothing. "But there is someone in there," I insisted. "He's sitting upright, he's awake, he talked to me." She raised an eyebrow. "You probably walked into 212A by accident." "No," I said firmly. "This was 212B. The door was open, lights on. His vitals were normal. "There's no equipment in that room," she cut in. "No vitals machine, no chart rack, no bed alarm." I blinked, because that wasn't true. I had used the vitals machine, rolled it in myself, even checked the battery indicator. I walked back toward the room, half annoyed, half unsettled. When I reached 212B, the door was closed. Not just pushed, not just resting on the frame, closed. Like someone shut it with intent. I stood there for a second, hand on the handle. A weird pressure built in my ears, like the air behind the door was heavier. I pushed it open. The lights flickered on with motion detection, and the room was empty. No patient, no vitals machine, no chair pulled out. The bed was perfectly made, corners tucked military tight, like housekeeping leaves it when a room is unused. I stepped inside slowly. The air was cool, not cold, just wrong. Like walking into a room after a fight you weren't part of. I walked to the far corner, the one he'd been facing. No chair marks, no footprints, no sign anyone had sat there. But when I touched the wall, it felt warm, like a hand had been resting there for a long time. My radio crackled. "You good?" the other nurse asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Maybe I mixed up rooms," but I knew I didn't. I went back to the station. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 50. I couldn't shake it. So around 3:35 a.m., I pulled up the hallway camera feed for 212B. There it was, 2:12 a.m., door open, my silhouette standing in the doorway, the back of my head, me walking inside, blocking the camera's angle. When I stepped out again a minute later, I could see myself clearly. But behind me, just visible in the frame, a figure was sitting in the same position I'd seen him earlier, still, facing the wall. I hit pause, leaning closer to the monitor. The timestamp was correct. 212B was labeled, "Empty room, no patient assigned." Yet there he was, a man in a gown, hands on knees, head tilted slightly to the right. I zoomed in. His face looked blurred, like the camera couldn't capture it. Then something made me sit perfectly still. The vitals machine, the one I'd brought in, wasn't in the frame, but a faint glow, green, pulsing, reflected on the bed's metal railing. A glow that matched a vitals monitor running. In the room right now, the rails were dull. I scrubbed the footage, frame by frame. At 2:14:33 a.m., something changed. The patient turned his head, slowly, as if hearing something just beyond the door. He didn't turn toward the camera, didn't turn toward me. He turned toward the hallway, and his mouth opened, like he was whispering. My chest tightened, because earlier that night, I had walked right past that door, and I had heard nothing. But on camera, his lips moved with purpose. A faint, almost absent voice whispered, "Is she still walking up and down?" He had said those exact words to me earlier, but on the camera, he said them right after I left the room, to no one, or someone I couldn't see. A shadow crossed the corner of the frame, fast, low, like movement just outside the view. The screen flickered. When it stabilized, the patient was gone, vanished between frames. The chair he'd been sitting in was empty, still gently rocking. I stared, heart thudding. Then, from down the hall, a door clicked shut. Soft, slow, deliberate. Room 212B. The room I had left open. The door clicking shut. That was the moment something in me finally shifted from confusion to fear. Not the movie kind, not the jump scare kind. Just that quiet, heavy fear that grows when reality stops lining up with what your eyes tell you. I walked back down the hall, slow, every step echoing too loudly on the tile. 212B's door was closed, lights off, room dark. I pressed my hand against the wood. Cold. It shouldn't have been. The heater vent runs right along the baseboard. Every other door was warm to the touch, but this one felt like a freezer panel. I opened it. The lights flicked on with motion detection, soft at first, then full brightness. The room was empty again, still, as untouched as a museum exhibit. No chair moved, no sheets disturbed, no vitals monitor glow. But on the floor near the corner, the same corner he always faced, there was a faint smudge, a heel mark, barefoot, pointed toward the wall. Someone had been standing there minutes ago. My radio crackled. This time it wasn't the other nurse. It wasn't static. It was breathing, slow, measured, close. I lifted the radio to my ear. "Hello?" I whispered. The breathing stopped. Then a faint voice, not quite a whisper, came through. "You always leave me here." It wasn't a voice I recognized. It sounded like the patient, but more alert, more present, like he wasn't talking to me, but about me. I backed out of the room fast. I needed another witness, someone awake. I went to find Tara. She wasn't at the station. Her phone and water bottle were still there. I checked the med room, empty. The bathroom, empty. Finally, I looked toward the dark end of the corridor. A figure stood in the hallway. My stomach dropped. "Tara?" I called. The figure didn't move, didn't turn. I stepped closer. "Tara?" The height was off, the posture wrong, the silhouette too thin. This wasn't Tara. This was him, the patient from 212B, back straight, head tilted, arms hanging loosely. But something was different. He wasn't facing the wall. He was facing a door, the supply room. The door was open a crack, just enough for darkness to leak out. The patient lifted his hand, slowly, deliberately, and pointed toward the open door. "No," I whispered. The door creaked open another inch, then another. The patient didn't move, but a second voice came from inside the room, soft, female. "He's not supposed to be awake right now." I stumbled backward, hit the wall, slid down, shaking. The patient lowered his hand, tilted his head, like listening to someone behind him in the supply room. Then, in one blink of the lights, he was gone. No footsteps, no sound. I scrambled back to the station. Tara was sitting there, typing like nothing happened. She looked up. "You okay? You look pale. Did you go down the hallway just now?" "No, I've been here." I opened my mouth. The overhead intercom crackled. A male voice came through. Same tone, same cadence. The patient. "Is she gone yet?" Tara looked at the speaker, horrified. "That room is empty," she whispered. The voice came again, clearer, right above us. "Is she gone?" The intercom stayed silent for 3 long seconds, then it crackled again. "She's closer tonight." Tara pushed back from her chair so hard it rolled. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. I already knew, not logically, but the way you know someone is staring at you before you turn around. "It's him," I said, my voice thin and stretched. "No," she insisted. 212B is empty. There's no call light connected. That speaker is tied to patient rooms only. "Exactly," I whispered. Something in her expression cracked. She grabbed the census sheet, skimmed it, then again. 19 patients. If there was someone else, registration would have entered him. Security would have logged him. I looked. 19 names, 19 rooms. 212B was blank, highlighted yellow for unused. But someone had scribbled initials in the margin. JM. "Who wrote that?" I asked. Tara stared. "I don't know. That wasn't there earlier." Beep, beep, beep. A call light went off. Tara checked the monitor. Room 212B. "That's impossible," she whispered. "That room's call system is dead." Still the light flashed. "I'll go," I heard myself say. The walk to 212B felt endless. Every overhead light buzzed. Every shadow leaned inward. At the door, the call light pulsed red. I opened it. The lights came on, and someone was sitting on the bed. Not the thin patient, someone else. Long hair covering their face, hands folded neatly in their lap, still as a statue. "Hello?" I whispered. No movement. The hospital gown, bare feet, the impossible stillness, it all felt wrong. I stepped closer. Then I saw it. An ankle ID bracelet. Old, yellowed, cracked. Only one letter still visible. J. The census margin. The initials. JM. "Are you John Miller?" I whispered. The figure collapsed sideways like a puppet cut. Hair slid away from the face, and there was no face, just smooth, pale skin, no eyes, no mouth, nothing. I stumbled back. The door slammed shut, the lights flickered. A voice came from the corner, his voice. "You weren't supposed to see her yet." I turned. He was there, the original patient, sitting in the corner, facing the wall, hands on his knees, exactly as before. But another voice, female, spoke softly behind him. She found him first. My skin crawled. "Who?" I whispered. "Who found who?" He didn't turn, didn't lift his head. "She found you," he said. The temperature in the room dropped fast. My breath turned white. The faceless body on the bed lay twisted, unmoving, like someone had placed it there just long enough to trick me and then abandoned it. The man in the corner hadn't shifted an inch, still facing the wall, still calm, still wrong. But now his shoulders rose and fell, slowly, like someone was breathing through him. "Why are you here?" I whispered. He finally moved, not his head, not his hands, just his jaw. "You counted me," he said. The words hit me hard. "What?" "You counted me," he repeated. "You wrote me down, when no one else has in a long time." My heart dropped. The census, the initials, JM. "I didn't write that," I said. "You saw her first," he said. "That's why I showed up." I stepped back, joints heavy. "Who is she?" I whispered. He tilted his head, listening to something behind him. "She walks the halls," he said, up and down, until someone notices." A cold pulse ran along my spine. Notices what? That she was never discharged. The lights flickered, hard, and reality seemed to hiccup. The man lifted one hand and pointed to the ceiling. "Look in the old census," he said, "before the renovation." "You need to leave," I whispered. "You need help." "You won't find my chart," he interrupted. "You'll find hers." My stomach twisted. "What's her name?" "She was the first one they forgot," he said softly. A gust of cold air swept through the room, though the vent was off. Then, tap, 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 on the wall behind me. 3 slow taps. "She wants your attention," he said. I don't want hers. You already have it." The overhead lights buzzed violently. The bed's call light turned on, despite the room's wiring being removed years ago. My voice cracked. "What does she want from me?" "To be counted." My knees weakened. Counted. Census. The system that decides who is real on paper and who isn't. "You wrote me down," he said. "You saw where I sit. You saw where she stands. You looked at us." He turned his head, revealing half his face, dim, like light refused to land on him. "You shouldn't have done that." "Why?" I whispered. "Because now she thinks you can see her too." Something shifted behind me, tall, close. A fragile breath touched my left ear. Am I on the list now? I bolted. I don't remember pushing the door open or running. I just remember reaching the nurse's station shaking. "Pull the old census," I gasped, "before the renovation." Tara stared but opened the archives. Most documents were faded scans, until 212B, Miller, John. Never discharged. Marked missing, unresolved. And below it, handwritten, 212B, Miller, Jane. Discharge date, blank. "Who's Jane Miller?" Tara whispered. "She was the first one they forgot," I said. Beep, beep, beep. The call light for 212B lit up again. Still unwired, still impossible, and still calling. The call light kept flashing. Beep, beep, beep. Steady, slow, like a heartbeat. Tara stepped back from the monitor, shaking her head. "No," she whispered. "I'm not going near that room again. I don't care what the system shows." "It shouldn't show anything," I said, trembling. "That wiring was pulled out 6 years ago." Impossible. Like the faceless body, like the voices, like the man appearing in empty frames. My hands were cold. I hadn't realized how badly I was shaking. "We need to call security," Tara said. "No," I said instantly. She stared, and I understood why. Because security would check every room, every hallway, every head count, and she, that presence, the woman who whispered in my ear, she wanted that. She wanted to be counted, to exist again. If security walked into 212B, they might acknowledge her, and then she'd never leave the building. The call light went dark. Then every screen at the nurse's station flickered. Monitors, cameras, ventilator readouts, all black. Then a message appeared. "Patient missing. Room 212B. Please verify in person." Tara's voice cracked. "That's not real. Please valid. Please version. Please version." "I'm not going," Tara whispered. "I'm not going down there." "I have to," I said. The hallway to 212B felt full, like too many people were standing in it, like the building held its breath. Halfway down, I heard footsteps, a woman's, sharp, steady. I froze. The steps didn't. They approached from behind. Close, too close. Then a whisper at my ear. "Write me down." I ran. I slammed into the stairwell door, but it wouldn't budge. Locked. Tap, tap, tap. 3 slow knocks from the other side. I backed away, breath turning white. The call light for 212B flashed again. I don't remember walking inside, just the motion light flickering on, the smell of disinfectant and something sweet, like old flowers. The room looked empty, but the chair, the one he always sat in, was now facing the door. A paper lay on the seat, a census sheet. Tonight's date, 19 patients listed, but someone had added a 20th name. 212B, Miller, Jane. Status, present, verified by a blank signature line, waiting. Behind me, a woman's voice whispered, "You saw me." The lights snapped off. Something cold touched the back of my neck. I ran, crashing into the hall, not stopping until Tara grabbed me. "What happened?" she cried. Down the corridor, 212B's door slowly closed on its own. The next morning, day shift arrived. The building hummed back to normal. The census refreshed. 19 patients, 212B empty. But a new footnote had appeared at the bottom. 212B, do not assign reason. Repeated unverified reports. "Who added that?" the supervisor asked. I didn't answer. As I walked away, the intercom crackled overhead. Static, then a woman's whisper, "Count me." The first time Room 9 called me, I almost answered on autopilot. It was a normal night in the ICU. Monitors humming, ventilators sighing, occasional alarms. I was charting at the nurse's station when I heard it. A soft chime, the intercom tone. Ding, ding. I glanced at the panel. The illuminated number was 9. Room 9 has been sealed for 5 years. Door bolted, window blacked out. A taped sign reading, "Do not use, out of service." It doesn't exist on the census or bed list, but at 2:38 in the morning, it was calling me. I walked to the panel and reset it. The light went dark. Seconds later, ding, the number 9 glowed again, steady, insistent. I pressed the intercom button. The speaker crackled, then hissed. "I see you, nurse. This room is out of service. If someone is inside..." I stopped. Room 9's intercom wiring was removed years ago. I let go. The light faded. I forced myself to return to charting. An hour later, the motion-activated light outside room 9 switched on. No one was in the hallway. The sensor only triggers with movement. My radio crackled, just static. "Everything okay?" someone called. "Yeah," I lied. I checked the panel again. All dark. At 4 a.m., the intercom clicked on by itself. No chime, just the sound of a mic opening. "Hello?" I asked. Breathing answered me. Slow, even, very close. "Which room is this?" A pause. Then a raspy male voice whispered, "Can you hear me?" My skin crawled. "Sir, where are you?" Another pause. Then, "Room 9. You never answer." I should have called engineering. I should have logged a ticket. I should have told someone with actual authority that a room with no wiring was suddenly talking. But night shift makes you numb to weird things. Machines beep for no reason. Old vents moan like dying animals. Half the time the building sounds haunted, even when it isn't. So I did what exhausted nurses always do. I tried to rationalize it. Bad wiring, loose circuit, moisture in the panel. Anything but what I knew deep down. Someone was using a disconnected intercom, and he knew I could hear him. I didn't go near room 9 for the next hour. Didn't even look down that hallway. Just kept checking meds, adjusting drips, pretending everything was normal. Around 4:45 a.m., respiratory therapy wheeled an oxygen tank past me. "You okay?" he asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Just tired," I muttered. He nodded and kept going, right down the hallway toward room 9. I watched him disappear around the corner, and then I heard it. Ding, ding. The call light for room 9 flashed again. I froze. Respiratory stopped walking too. I could hear his shoes skid a little on the tile. Then he called out loudly. "Who the hell triggered that? Nobody's supposed to be in there." His footsteps started again, faster this time. I jogged after him. "Wait, don't open the door." But when I turned the corner, he wasn't there. The hallway was empty, silent. Motion light flickering over the sealed door of room 9. No sign of him. "Jason?" I called out. Nothing. I hurried to the door. The big metal latch was still bolted, the seal still intact, dust around the hinges undisturbed. There was no way he went inside, but he wasn't in the hall either. I reached for my radio. "Jason, where are you?" Static. Then a faint crackle. Then a voice. But it wasn't Jason's. It was the same man from before, the same rasp, the same cold, intimate tone. "He's in here." I felt my whole body tense. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." The radio cut off. The intercom chime went off again. Ding, ding. I walked, slowly, toward the panel beside the door. The button was glowing red. Not the usual yellow, red. I pressed it with a shaking thumb. "This is ICU," I said. "Identify yourself." The speaker crackled. Then I heard movement. Slow, heavy, something dragging across the floor inside room 9. A bed leg? A chair? Something else? Then the man spoke. "Do you hear us?" I swallowed hard. "Us?" A soft second voice slid out from behind his. Female, barely audible. "Help him." I stepped back so fast, I nearly tripped. "No," I whispered. "No one is supposed to be in there. That room is sealed." The man's voice came again. Closer, clearer. "You sealed us in." My stomach dropped. "Sir, listen, this room is not in service. There's no one assigned. No one can get in or out." The female voice interrupted me. "Why did you lock the door, nurse?" My blood ran cold. "How do you know who I am?" Silence. Then, 3 knocks on the inside of the door. Slow, measured. Knock, knock, knock. I stumbled backward until my shoulders hit the opposite wall. The intercom clicked off. The call light went dark. The hallway returned to silence, but not an ordinary silence. A thick, wrong silence. Like someone was standing just behind the door, listening to me breathe. I avoided room 9 after the knocks, after the voice saying, "Nurse." But hospitals don't stop because you're scared. Rooms needed meds, vents needed checking, patients needed turning. The shift kept moving, but the awareness stayed, a pressure, like room 9 was awake now and watching me. Every time I passed the hallway entrance, the motion light outside room 9 flickered on, even when I wasn't near it, even when I only glanced that way. Around 5:20 a.m., Jason finally reappeared, just walked into the station like nothing happened. "You still need me to check the vent in 14? He asked. I stared at him. "Jason, where did you go?" He frowned. "What do you mean? I went to grab a mask from the closet." "No, I saw you walk down the hallway, toward room 9. He shook his head. "Nope, didn't go near it." He wasn't lying. He didn't remember, or he never went there at all. Before I could answer, his radio crackled. Static, then a woman's voice. "He didn't make it." Jason froze. "What the hell was that?" Before I could speak, every intercom panel at the station lit up. All rooms, even empty ones, flashing red and yellow. Then one by one they flickered off, until only one remained. 9. Ding, ding. Jason backed away. "Nope, I'm not going near that." He walked off, leaving me alone. The call light glowed. So did the hallway sensor. A pull, like someone waiting. I walked closer, slowly. The air cooled like freezer air slipping under a door. A faint scraping sound seeped through the crack beneath room 9's door. Metal dragging across tile. "Hello?" I whispered. The scraping stopped. Then a new voice. Not the man, not the woman. A child. "Can you open it now?" I stumbled back. "No." The child's voice came again, from the floor vent. "Please. She's hurting him." My pulse hammered. "Who is she?" I whispered. Silence. Then, bang. The inside of the door shook. Bang, bang, bang. Something was throwing its weight at the sealed metal door. I screamed and ran. By the time I reached the station, my hands shook so hard I could barely stand. No one else reacted. No nurses, no patients, only me. The call light went dark. The hallway sensor shut off. Everything looked normal, except the ICU computer screen. A new message appeared, not from the intercom, from the internal system, addressed to my login. "Room 9, stop ignoring us." The ICU monitor displayed a message that wouldn't disappear. "Room 9, stop ignoring us." It was typed into the staff message board, the one only employees could access, with their login, and it was addressed to mine. Tara walked up. "What are you looking at?" I pointed. She squinted. "There's nothing there," but I still saw it. Bold, centered, staring at me. Only I could see it. Before I could answer, the intercom clicked on. No chime, no call light, just the soft hiss of a mic opening. "ICU," I whispered. "State your room." A long pause, then the man's voice. "You didn't answer." "I did," I whispered. "You didn't come," he said. "You heard us, and you didn't come." The woman's voice slid in. "He's suffering. Let us out." Then the child. "She won't stop." All three voices overlapping. My vision blurred. "This isn't real," I whispered. The intercom snapped off. Then the hallway lights died. Not flickered, died. Pitch black swallowed the corridor to room 9. Every monitor in the ICU flickered. Vital screens, ventilator readouts, room cams. Then a single image flashed across all screens. A dark room, a bed, 2 shadows standing beside it, and a third shape on the floor. Then everything returned to normal. "That's room 9, I whispered. Tara opened the system logs. Room 9 displayed. Camera, manual override audio, live status, occupied. Then the status flickered and changed to verified. Something shifted behind me, air moving, not sound. I turned. The corridor was still pitch black, but the motion light outside room 9 turned on. Someone was standing under it, tall, thin, completely still. Tara grabbed my arm. "Don't go down there," but I took a step. The intercom came on again. The woman's voice, soft, almost gentle. "Open the door, nurse. We don't want him to die in here again." Again. I stared into the dark. "Who is he?" Silence. Then a whisper, right beside my ear. "The one you let in." "No," I whispered. "I didn't let anyone." "Yes," she whispered. "Tonight." When the hallway light first flickered, you looked away. My chest tightened. The motion light glowed brighter. A second figure appeared beside the first. Then a third, much smaller. All 3 silhouettes stood perfectly still beneath the light, watching, waiting. I should have called security, but something about those 3 silhouettes under the motion light made every instinct in me go still, like prey waiting for the predator to move first. "Tara," I whispered, "don't come closer." She stayed frozen at the nurse's station. The 3 shapes didn't move, not a shift, not a breath, just watching. My radio crackled. The child's voice whispered, "You waited too long." "What do you want from me?" I asked. The man answered, "To be seen." Then the woman, "To be heard." Together, "To be let out." "This room was sealed," I whispered, "for a reason." The man's voice sharpened. "No, it was abandoned." The woman hissed. "They left us here." The child added softly, "Alone." The hallway lights blasted on. When my eyes adjusted, the silhouettes were gone. Empty hallway, silent, still. But a soft blue glow pulsed from underneath room 9's door. Impossible, since the room had no power. My radio clicked again. Tap, tap, tap. Not on the radio, behind me. A child-sized handprint smeared the glass beside the station. Fresh condensation trailing down. Tara screamed. The intercom panels all lit up. Most flickered out. Only one stayed on. Room 9. New text appeared on the panel. Audio link. Active channel. 2-way override. Accepted. "Override?" I whispered. "There is no override for a sealed room." Tara grabbed my arm. "We need to leave, right now." The intercom cut her off with the ragged sound of agonal breathing. Then the man's voice, weak, fading. "They locked the door. We couldn't reach the call button. We waited." The woman sobbed through the speaker. "No one came," the child whispered. "They forgot us." The hallway lights flickered. Then the latch on room 9's door turned. Slowly, heavily. Metal bolts unwinding. Tara clutched my arm. They're opening it. The final bolt slid free. The door to room 9 opened, just a few inches, enough for someone to look out, or invite us in. Inside the darkness, the soft blue glow pulsed again. Alive. Waiting. The door to room 9 stayed open only a few inches, not wide enough to see inside, just wide enough for the darkness to feel aware. The soft blue glow inside the room pulsed slowly, like something breathing. Tara whispered, "We're not going down there. I'm calling the supervisor." Her radio answered with static, mine too. From the tiny gap in the door, a sound drifted out. A soft, dragging, skin on tile. Something or someone moving closer. I backed away. The intercom came on one last time. The man's voice, "Don't leave us. Not again." Then the woman, "Someone has to answer." Then the child, "You heard us." The lights above room 9 flickered violently. Then the entire hallway went black. Only the blue glow remained. Then, a small face appeared in the gap. Not fully, just an eye. Pale, wide, unblinking, watching me. I stumbled back, knocking over a tray. Tara grabbed my arm. "We're leaving," she said. "I don't care if we get written up." We left the ICU. We didn't look back. The next morning, day shift arrived. Lights normal. No one mentioned room 9. The outage, the voices, nothing. I checked the ICU logs. Room 9, status, sealed, audio, disconnected, camera, offline, power, disabled. Like nothing happened. But at the bottom of the page, a new note had been added. Room 9, occupants, 3, verified by RN number 2741. My ID number. I tried deleting it. The system wouldn't allow it. My radio crackled once. A whisper, soft, childlike. "We're still here." Down the hall, the motion light above room 9 flickered on. Even though the door was sealed. Even though it was daylight. If you're on night shift and you hear an intercom chime from a room that shouldn't exist, don't answer it. Some rooms don't want help. They just want to make sure you're listening. I noticed it by accident. Most bad things on night shift start that way. A monitor beeped in room 11. Just a low priority heart rate alert. So I walked in half asleep, expecting a loose lead or a patient rolling onto their side. The man in the bed was awake, wide awake, just staring at the ceiling with a blank expression that made the fluorescent lights feel colder than usual. "Everything okay?" I asked. "You feeling dizzy, chest tight?" He slowly turned his head toward me. His eyes tracked me, but something in them didn't connect. Like he was watching a window reflection, not a person. "I'm fine," he whispered. He didn't sound fine. But I checked the monitor, normal vitals. Heart rate steady, O2 saturation perfect. Blood pressure annoyingly textbook. Nothing wrong. I turned to scan his ID bracelet, and that's when I saw it. My own shadow stretched across the floor from the overhead lights. Clear, sharp, exactly where it should be. But his? Nothing. His bed rails, IV pole, and monitor cast shadows on the floor. He didn't. I blinked hard, stepped to the side, leaned right, leaned left. My shadow moved. His did not exist. I looked up. Maybe the light was angled weird. Maybe the ceiling fixture was dead above his bed. Number. The light was bright, direct. Anything solid in that room should have cast a shadow. "Sir," I said carefully, "can you sit up a little? I want to check something." He didn't move. He didn't even blink. "I don't cast one anymore," he whispered. My skin prickled. "Anymore?" He slowly turned his face back to the ceiling. It stopped yesterday. I backed up one step. You noticed it? He nodded once, barely. Noticed. And then realized no one else did. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? His breathing hitched, like he was holding back panic he didn't want me to see. I tried showing the day nurse. I stood in the direct sunlight. She didn't see anything wrong. I froze. He swallowed hard. They can't see it, he whispered, but you can. Something about the way he said it felt heavy. Correct. Wrong. Like he had been waiting for someone to finally notice. Sir, what's your name? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. So I checked his bracelet. But the tag was blank. Just a white hospital band. No name, no date of birth, no medical record number, nothing. I think you're misbanded, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Let me check your chart. He closed his eyes. You won't find me. The hall lights outside room 11 flickered, just once, and the monitor beside his bed spiked for half a second before returning to perfect normal. I stepped toward the door. I'll be right back, okay? But before I left, he whispered something that stopped me cold. Don't check the camera. I turned slowly. Why not? His eyes finally met mine, glass clear, emotionless. Because on the camera, his lips barely moved. I cast one. I left room 11 fast, not running, just walking with purpose, the way nurses do when something's wrong but you don't want to scare the patients. The hallway felt colder than 5 minutes earlier. I went straight to the charting computer and typed his room number. Nothing came up. I tried again. Different spelling, different filters. Room 11 showed as occupied, but patient name was blank, all fields empty. The system simply labeled him unknown, unverified entry, which isn't possible. Registration doesn't allow unknown. Every patient gets at least a temporary ID bracelet, no exceptions. I checked the physical chart holder outside his room. Empty. No papers, no stickers, not even a blank binder. Just nothing. I felt the prickling sensation, the one you get when you realize a normal explanation is slipping away. I opened the door again and looked inside. He was exactly where I'd left him, flat on his back, staring at the ceiling. Still no shadow. The light above him was harsh, direct. If anything, it should have cast a longer one. But the tile beneath him was perfectly clean, blank, like the light refused to acknowledge he was there. Sir, I said gently, I'm trying to confirm your chart, but it looks like something's wrong with the system. He blinked once. It's not the system. I stepped closer. What happened to your shadow? He turned his head slightly toward me. When you lose it, you don't notice it first, not until something else goes. A pause, then something else. What do you mean, something else? He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed weakly toward the wall, toward the small security camera dome in the corner. The camera still sees it, he whispered. That's why you shouldn't look. I swallowed. Why not? He shut his eyes tight, like the memory hurt, because the shadow on the camera moved on its own. My breath stopped. Moved how? It stood up. I felt my heart climb into my throat. That's not possible. He let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. I know. I glanced up at the camera, just a small black dome, nothing unusual. But the idea burrowed deep in my mind like an infection. I needed to know. So I stepped out into the hallway, walked to the nearest workstation on wheels, and pulled up the camera feed list. Room 11 wasn't listed. Not offline. Not disabled. Just missing. Like the room didn't exist at all. What the hell? I muttered. As I scrolled, the monitor flickered once. Then every camera feed went black. All at the same time. For 2 seconds. Then static. Soft. hissing. A single feed popped up by itself. No label, no timestamp, just a view of a dim room. A ceiling light, a bed, a figure lying on it. Room 11. But the figure, it wasn't still. Its shadow was. The man lay motionless, chest rising and falling. But beside the bed, on the wall, his shadow was standing upright, stretched long and unnatural, as if pressed to the wall watching him sleep. My skin crawled. I leaned closer to the screen. The standing shadow tilted its head slowly, not matching his movement, independent, aware. Then it turned toward the camera. My stomach dropped. The feed cut instantly. Black, silent. I stood frozen, gripping the edges of the workstation. Behind me, from inside room 11, the man spoke again. Not loud, not urgent. Just a soft reminder. I told you not to look. I didn't go back into room 11 right away. My legs wouldn't let me. I stood in the hallway, gripping the edges of the workstation, trying to convince myself I hadn't really seen it, that the camera feed had glitched, that the distortion was caused by static, that the shadow hadn't turned toward the camera on purpose. But deep down, I knew what I saw. Shadows don't tilt their heads. Shadows don't break away from your body. Shadows don't watch you. I forced myself to breathe and walked back toward the room. Before I got there, I heard something. A soft thump, then another, then a dragging sound. Not inside his room, above it. In the ceiling. I froze, looked up. The ceiling panel directly above room 11 shifted. Tiny dust particles rained down in a slow, unsettling drift. Something was moving in the crawl space. Something heavy enough to bow the panel downward for half a second. I reached for my radio. Before I could speak, the patient inside room 11 said, "It's following me." I stepped into the doorway. He was still lying flat on the bed, still expressionless, still not casting a shadow. But something was different. His eyes weren't on the ceiling anymore. They were fixed on the far wall, the one opposite the camera. His voice sounded thinner, like the air was being pulled out of him. "It doesn't like that you saw it." My mouth went dry. "Your shadow? Why would it care?" He spoke very slowly, each word like he was remembering something painful. "Because it isn't mine anymore." A chill ran from my spine down into my legs. "What do you mean?" He turned his head toward me. It detached. I swallowed. Shadows don't detach. He blinked once, so slowly it looked unnatural. I didn't think so either. A soft knock echoed above us in the ceiling. Knock, knock, knock. I flinched. The man didn't. "It lives up there now," he whispered. "During the day." My stomach tightened. "And at night?" I asked, barely breathing. He exhaled shakily. "At night, it comes closer." The hallway lights flickered. Suddenly, everything electrical in the room dimmed for a split second. The monitor, the overhead lights, even the emergency exit sign outside. It was subtle, but unmistakable, like something had drained power from the unit. I backed up a step. "Sir, is something happening right now?" He didn't look at me. "It moves when the lights dip." I froze. "Is it moving now?" He nodded. Very slowly. My heart slammed against my ribs. I looked toward the wall where the shadow had appeared on the camera. Just a blank stretch of tile. Nothing there. Then the overhead light flickered again, and something shifted on the wall. Not a shape. Not fully. Just darkness. Pooling. Thickening. Like a stain growing on the white tiles. I whispered, "Sir, don't move." He didn't. The darkness on the wall stretched, elongated, as if something was pulling itself together. A head shape, then shoulders, then arms, too long, reaching down toward the floor. The patient whispered, voice cracking, "It wants me back." The shadow on the wall turned. Not quickly, slowly, deliberately, and its head tilted toward me, just like it did on the camera. My body locked. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't blink. The man spoke again. "It knows you can see it now." I stepped backward. One step, then another. The shadow peeled slightly forward, as if it were leaning out of the wall, reaching, searching. And then, unexpectedly, the patient whispered, "Don't let it touch you." I should have backed out of the room. I should have hit the code blue button. I should have called security, or psych, or literally anyone. But I just stood there, frozen. The shadow on the wall leaned forward, slowly, like gravity didn't apply to it. It stretched off the tile and curved toward the floor, bending in ways no human body ever could, like watching a marionette with strings you couldn't see. The patient's breathing grew shallow. "It's getting stronger," he whispered. "When the lights flicker, that's when it moves fastest." I whispered, "Is it trying to hurt you?" He hesitated, then shook his head with a tiny, trembling motion. "No, it's trying to go back." "Back where?" He didn't answer. The shadow shifted again, faster this time. A long limb dragged across the floor, leaving no sound, but a smear of darkness that lingered half a second too long before fading. I backed toward the doorway. "Sir, you need to tell me what's happening to you." He finally looked at me. I mean, really looked at me. With fear. "With me? Nothing's happening to me." He swallowed hard. "It's happening to it." I didn't understand. Before I could ask, the overhead light in the room flickered violently. Once, twice, 3 times. The shadow snapped across the floor like a sudden whip of darkness and stopped inches from his bed. His monitor alarmed for 1 sharp second, then quiet. I felt the air pressure change, like the room exhaled. He whispered, "It's almost here." "What is?" He stared at the wall across from him without blinking. "It's you." My blood froze. "What do you mean, me?" He didn't look away. "When a shadow detaches," he said quietly, "it looks for a new host." I can't. That's not how shadows work." "You saw it," he whispered. "You made eye contact. That's all it needs." My heart hammered. That doesn't make any sense. It wants to belong to someone again. I backed another step. The shadow rose slowly from the floor, shifting shape, elongating until it was taller than both of us, not human-shaped anymore. Leaning, listening, watching. "Sir," I whispered, "why did it leave you?" He closed his eyes. "Because I don't exist here anymore." That hit me like ice water. "What?" He opened his eyes again. Empty, clear, not human in the way a living person is. "You can't chart me," he whispered. "You can't scan my bracelet. The camera doesn't show me lying down. The system marked me as unverified for a reason." My stomach twisted. "You're saying you're dead?" A single tear formed in the corner of his eye. "I'm saying the hospital forgot to realize it." Everything inside me went hollow. The shadow twitched, a sudden jerk, like a beast testing its chains. Then it started to move toward me, slow at first, then faster. I stumbled backward into the hallway. "Don't let it touch you," he repeated, louder this time. The lights in the entire unit dimmed at once. The shadow lunged and stopped exactly at the threshold of the doorway. It couldn't cross. Not yet. Instead, it pressed against the invisible barrier, stretching, testing, finding the edges of whatever kept it inside the room. Then something horrifying happened. The patient smiled, small, sad, resigned. "It picked you," he whispered, "not me." And then, the overhead lights died completely. Pitch black swallowed the entire hallway. Except for one thing. The shadow. It was still visible, still standing, still waiting. The hallway stayed completely dark, except for the shadow standing in the doorway. It didn't flicker, didn't distort, didn't vanish when the emergency lights failed. It just stood there, visible, solid. Like it didn't need light to exist anymore. I stepped back slowly, one hand sliding along the wall until my fingers found the crash cart. Some part of my brain screamed to run, but the patient spoke again. "Don't run," he whispered. "It learns from movement." I swallowed hard. "What does it want from me?" He turned his head toward me again, barely. "You saw it," he said. "That made you real to it. That doesn't make sense." "It doesn't want a shadow," he whispered. "It wants an anchor." Before I could ask what that meant, the overhead lights sputtered. Once, twice. Then came back dimmer than before, barely enough to outline the room and my own trembling silhouette. And that's when I realized my shadow had changed. It wasn't matching me anymore. I lifted my hand slowly. My shadow didn't. I froze. The patient whispered, "It already touched part of you." My chest tightened. No, I didn't feel anything. "You don't feel it," he said softly. "Not until it's done." The shadow in the doorway stirred, a subtle ripple along its edges, like wind moving through smoke. Then it leaned forward again, not stepping, just stretching, reaching, trying to understand the boundary it couldn't cross. I whispered, "Why can't it leave the room?" The patient sighed, an exhausted, fragile sound. "Because it still belongs to me, until I'm gone." "You mean until you die?" A long silence. Then, I did. I felt my heart drop. "Sir, you're alive. You're talking to me." "Only because I haven't realized it fully," he whispered. "And the hospital hasn't realized it either." He took a slow breath. "When the system doesn't record your death, you get stuck between both places, long enough for the shadow to separate." The lights flickered again. My shadow twitched violently, like something yanked it by the spine. I gasped and dropped to one knee. It felt like the air had thickened, pressing against my back. The patient whispered urgently, "You need to leave now, before it finishes choosing you." "But it can't cross the threshold," I said. "That boundary weakens," he whispered. "Each time the lights flicker, it gets closer." The shadow moved again. Half its form slipped past the doorway, just inches, like its front half had no trouble crossing, but the rest struggled. It jerked, twisted, pulled itself through the invisible barrier inch by inch. I backed away fast. The patient suddenly shouted, weak but desperate, "Run when the lights go out." "What? Why?" The overhead lights flickered violently, once, twice, 3 times, and then shut off completely. The hallway drowned in black, and something cold rushed toward me. Fast, too fast. A scraping sound, like nails dragging through the air, raced up behind me. I spun around blindly and saw nothing. Nothing but the shape, the shadow, now fully free of the doorway, standing in the dark, watching me with no eyes at all. The shadow stood there in the darkness, as if it had been waiting for this moment. No face, no limbs the way a person has them, just a tall, shifting smear of blackness, a stain that had peeled itself away from the world. I backed up slowly. The air was colder near it, like it carried its own gravity. The scraping sound circled behind me again, light, searching, almost curious. "Stay where the lights should be," the patient whispered from the room. His voice sounded weaker now, farther away. "There are no lights," I whispered. "There will be." As if responding to him, the emergency bulbs flickered faintly to life, not fully, just enough to show outlines. And that's when I realized something horrible. The shadow wasn't copying me anymore. It was anticipating me. When I stepped back, it leaned forward. When I turned, its head tilted first. Not mimicking, predicting. Like it knew what I was about to do before I did. My chest tightened. "Why me?" I whispered. The patient exhaled slowly. It always chooses the ones who notice. I felt the words hit something deep in me. "The ones who see what shouldn't be seen," he added. I shook my head. "That doesn't answer anything." He didn't respond. His monitor did. A long, flat tone rang out. Beep! A code blue alarm. I froze. "Sir!" I shouted. No answer. The monitor flashed asystole. Dead. But he had already told me that, hadn't he? I turned back to the hallway. The shadow wasn't standing anymore. It was crouched, low to the ground, closer, waiting. The emergency light flickered, and something inside my own shadow twitched, just once, barely perceptible. But enough to notice, enough to know. It had touched me, maybe earlier in the dark, maybe when I stepped too close. I stumbled backward, panicked, and reached blindly for the code blue button, but something stopped my hand. Not physically, just an overwhelming sensation. Don't. A pressure in my chest, like a second heartbeat that wasn't mine. I looked down at my feet. My shadow wasn't where it should be. It was off to the side, leaning away from me, like a person about to stand up. The real shadow on the floor, the one still crouched in the hallway, slowly straightened. Two shadows. Neither belonged to the patient anymore. One belonged to me, or was becoming mine. The other, The other was stepping toward me. The overhead lights buzzed once, twice, and shut off again. Darkness consumed everything. Something cold brushed the side of my leg, then my shoulder, then the back of my neck. A whisper, so close it felt like it came from inside my own lungs, said, "You noticed. So you're mine now." I choked for breath, felt weight pulling at me, but from inside, not outside, like something tugging at the absence behind me. The emergency lights surged back on, and in that split second, the shadow was gone. The hallway empty. Room 11, silent. The patient was still, monitors flatlined. No sign of movement on the walls, the floor, or the ceiling. Except my shadow. It lagged half a second behind me. Just enough to notice. Just enough to know. As I backed away, my radio crackled softly. A whisper, faint, stretched, barely forming words. "Don't lose track of me." Then silence. The next shift, 7:12 a.m. Day staff flooded into the unit. Lights back to full brightness, everything looking normal again. They asked about the code, about the patient in room 11, but when I pointed at the room, there was no patient, no bed, no chart, nothing. Room 11 was empty, perfectly clean, like no one had used it in a long time. The day charge nurse frowned at me. "That room's been closed for weeks," she said. I looked down at my hands, at the floor, at the shadow attached to me. Lagging again, half a second behind, learning. And every few seconds, just barely, I could see another shape in it, one that wasn't mine. The ICU patient was fully sedated, unresponsive, intubated. So when he whispered my full name, and the camera showed he never moved his lips, I realized something else in the room had said it. I wasn't supposed to hear anything from room 3B. The patient had been sedated for hours, intubated, completely unresponsive. He wasn't supposed to breathe on his own, let alone talk. I had just finished checking a supply cart when I heard it. Soft, clear, right behind the door. My name, my full name, not nurse, not miss, not a whisper that could be misheard through the vents. My full name, spoken slowly, syllable by syllable. I checked his status on the tablet outside his room. Sedation level, high. Respiratory support, 100%. Movement, none. He shouldn't have been able to form a sound, and yet, when I touched the door, he said my name again, clearer this time. I opened the door. The ventilator hissed steadily. The monitor beeped calmly. Everything was normal. He lay still, eyes closed, no twitch, no movement. "Sir?" I asked. Silence. I checked the lines, the IV pump, his vitals, all perfect. Then I noticed the security camera blinking red, recording. I tapped the monitor screen and rewound the last 60 seconds. In the footage, he never moved. His mouth stayed closed. His chest rose and fell under the ventilator. But the audio meter spiked twice, exactly when he spoke my name. I watched the clip again, and again. No lips moving, but the whisper was there. Something was wrong. As I turned back toward the bed, the ventilator hissed, and under the hiss, I heard a whisper. Not my name. 2 words, right beside my ear. "Come closer." The whisper came from the wrong direction. Not from the bed, not from the vent, not from the hallway. Right behind my left ear. I turned fast. Nothing there. Only the dim corner of the ICU room, a half-drawn curtain, an IV pole casting a thin shadow. Too quiet. The patient lay still, sedated, unresponsive. Yet the whisper had been close, too close. I stepped toward the door. The air felt heavier, thicker. The monitor beeped softly, a tiny alert, like someone touched the leads. His fingers twitched, just once. "Sir, can you hear me?" I whispered. No response. His pupils were normal, sedation perfect. He shouldn't move at all. Then the ventilator sighed, a soft exhale that didn't belong to any setting I knew. I checked the tubing. No leaks, everything normal. But the sigh was real. The curtain on the far side of the room swayed. A tiny movement, like something brushed past it. "Who's there?" I called. No answer. I pulled the curtain aside. Nothing there. Just cold air. Too cold, like a refrigerator left open. I turned back to the patient. His finger twitched again, twice. I looked at the camera in the corner, blinking red, recording. I opened the feed on the wall monitor and rewound 30 seconds. My body blocked part of the view, but behind me, the patient's head moved, just an inch, but enough that he was looking directly at my back. In real life, he hadn't moved at all. "No, this is wrong." A whisper floated from the bed. "Closer." His mouth didn't move. His chest rose only with the ventilator. "Closer." I leaned forward, barely. The whisper stopped. Then the ventilator beeped, an oxygen fluctuation. The screen showed something impossible, a second oxygen waveform, a second breathing pattern, 2 rhythms, 1 patient. Something else in the room was breathing. I stepped back from the monitor. 2 breathing patterns, 2 separate rhythms, 1 ventilator, 1 patient. It shouldn't be possible. The second pattern inhaled when the patient didn't, paused when his cycle moved, exhaled slow, long, like lungs larger than his. Cold gathered at the base of my neck. I turned. The patient's shadow was gone. The overhead light hit him directly, but there was no outline on the floor, just empty tile. My own shadow, normal, still attached, for now. I approached the bed slowly. The air grew colder. The patient lay perfectly still. Then, his eyelids twitched, tiny, unnatural movements. "Sir, can you hear me?" Silence. Static cracked on the monitor, a sound it shouldn't make. I looked at the glass surface of the monitor and froze. In the reflection behind me, by the foot of the bed, a shape was standing. Tall, still, head tilted. I turned. Nothing. Back to the reflection, the shape was closer, drifting, watching. It lifted one hand, long, stretched, and pointed at me. My chest tightened. The patient made a muffled groan beneath the ventilator. His eyes opened halfway, but his pupils weren't centered. They were locked onto the ceiling corner, tracking something I couldn't see. His lips moved around the tube, impossible, forming a faint warning. Don't breathe. The second breathing waveform spiked violently. Something exhaled beside my ear, cold, sharp. The room lights dimmed all at once, and behind me, so close it felt inside my skin, a whisper said, "Behind you." I didn't turn around. The whisper was too close, cold breath against the back of my neck. Not warm, not human. I backed toward the door slowly. The lights stayed dim, like something stood between me and the bulbs. I checked the reflection on the monitor again. The shape behind me had moved, no longer at the foot of the bed, now right over my shoulder, close enough that I should have seen it, but I didn't. "Sir," I whispered, "if you can hear me, say something." His pupils snapped upward, toward the space over my shoulder. His lips trembled around the tube. "Don't look." The whisper behind me inhaled, long, slow, thin, like it was smelling me. The air pressure tightened, my chest locked. I reached for the door handle, missed twice, finally grabbed it. The second breathing waveform spiked hard, not the patient's breath, the other breath. Then, a hand touched my back, cold, flat, boneless. I lurched forward into the door. The lights flickered violently. The shadow on the monitor vanished. I spun around. Nothing there. The patient's eyes were wide open now, full of terror. His vitals rising, heart rate climbing, oxygen dipping. "Stay with me," I said, moving toward him. But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the camera. I tapped the monitor again. The camera feed opened, and everything inside me went numb. The feed showed the room, the bed, the patient, and me, but not me. A figure shaped like me stood beside the bed, motionless, stiff, wrong. My real body was across the room, near the door, shaking. On the feed, the me beside the bed turned its head toward the patient, then toward the camera, then toward where I actually stood. No. The patient's heart rate spiked. He mouthed the word, "behind." My stomach dropped. I looked up at the camera. The lens was pointed directly at me. A whisper drifted from the ceiling above me. Soft, close. I said closer. The patient who said my name before I entered the room. Part 5. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed to get out, but my legs wouldn't move. It felt like something pressed down on my shoulders. Cold, light, impossible to fight. The whisper above me faded, not gone, just pulled back into the ceiling. I forced myself to step toward the bed. "Sir, look at me," I said. "You're okay." He wasn't. His eyes locked on the ceiling corner, terrified, tracking something I couldn't see. The camera feed flickered. The image bent like heat waves. Then the other me on the screen stepped closer to the lens, its outline warping, edges sharpening, growing darker, like a shadow forgetting how to lie flat. I looked down. My shadow lagged a half-second behind me. I raised my hand. My shadow raised its hand late, then kept lifting long after I stopped, rising higher, stretching longer, too long. I stumbled back into the wall. The patient gagged around the tube. Eyes blown wide, not at me, at my shadow. The second breathing waveform grew louder. The wrong breath, the one from something else. I grabbed the bed rail, but my fingers went numb, cold spreading across my knuckles like frost. Something was touching my shadow. I jerked back. My shadow moved first, leading, not following. "Leave," the patient croaked. I hit the call button. Dead. The lights dimmed. My shadow stretched across the floor toward the bed, thin, long, reaching. A shape dropped from the ceiling behind me, not landing, hovering. A patch of darkness thicker than the rest of the room. The patient whispered, "Run." I grabbed the door handle, but my shadow grabbed it first. Its hand wrapped around the darkness of the handle, and the metal stayed cold under my real hand. It wasn't letting me go. The monitor crackled as the figure on the camera feed pressed its blank face against the lens. Closer, closer. From the ceiling above my head came a whisper. "You shouldn't have heard your name." The lights went out. The patient who said my name before I entered the room. Part 6. When the lights went out, I didn't move. A weight pressed against my shoulders, chest, back, holding me still. The room hummed, a low vibration from inside the dark. My shadow tightened around my feet. I could feel it, like being watched without eyes. The second breathing pattern on the ventilator rose sharply. Something in the room inhaled. Then, a whisper leaned close to my ear. "Say it." "What?" I whispered. "Your name." "No." The pressure tightened. The ceiling creaked, something heavy shifting over my head. "Say it out loud." "I'm not doing that." The patient's vitals exploded, heart rate spiking, oxygen dropping. He thrashed once, violently, impossible under sedation. His eyes locked onto me, or onto something around me. "Don't," he mouthed. The monitor flatlined, but the presence didn't move. A whisper rose from the floor, from where my shadow should be. "I can wear you." Cold washed through me. "If you say it." "No." Silence. Then a cold hand dragged across my leg. "Say it." "I'm not giving you anything," I whispered. The pressure snapped back, like something inhaled too fast, and everything vanished. The lights flicked on. The patient was gone, the machines normal, the room empty. Security arrived, found nothing wrong, but one guard pointed at the floor beside me. "Ma'am, your shadow looks weird." My shadow wasn't touching my feet. It stood slightly behind me, a step late, trying to match. It twitched, corrected itself, studied me, learning. Leaving the hospital, I saw my reflection in the automatic doors. For a moment, there were two of me. Then I blinked, only one. And the shadow behind me, just a fraction too slow, whispered, "You still haven't said your name." Night shift changes you in ways daylight never can. You start noticing the small things first. A door closing a little too slowly. A patient saying something they shouldn't know. A hallway feeling longer than it should be. And after enough nights, you stop telling yourself it's just fatigue. Because deep down, every nurse, every tech, every security guard knows. There are moments in a hospital that don't belong to medicine, or to logic, or to any explanation a chart can hold. Some of the things you hear on night shift aren't just sounds. Some of the things you see aren't just tricks of the light. And some of the things that whisper your name aren't always standing where you think they are. If you've ever worked a night shift, or walked through a quiet hospital hallway, and felt that cold prickle on your spine, you're not imagining it. Most people never talk about these experiences, but the ones who do never forget them. If you've had a strange moment of your own, share it in the comments. Tell me your city, your time, and your shift. And until the next story, stay safe, stay alert, and whatever you do, don't look behind you when the hallway goes quiet.